everyone. Welcome to the second episode of this podcast, Quédate. I am your host once again, Ana Paula, and thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to be recording the second episode. For those of you who watched my first episode, thank you so much for coming back. And yeah, I hope everybody is having a great day. Today's Sunday, the weekend right before spring break. I started off my day by seeing some of my close friends. So that was really nice to spend time with them and share a little bit about this podcast. So I told them today for the first time about me recording this podcast, and they were super excited for me too. So I'm excited for you guys to meet them because I do plan on bringing them on this podcast eventually as well, so that they can talk a little bit about their like life experiences and mental health experiences as well. So very excited for that. And so so thank you again for being back here. So today I thought about what I could talk about, and so I really want to talk about this certain topic that I have been thinking about for a pretty long time. And I think it's something that until I experienced it, I was able to kind of process that as well. And I feel like I'm still kind of learning how to kind of cope with it now. And so with that, what I'm talking about is moving out of your parents' home for the very first time. And so this is something that I really wanted to talk about. This is an experience that I think is very significant for me, because I never realized how much impact and just kind of how much emotional turmoil one experiences after they move out of their parents' house, at least for me. And I do want to acknowledge that I think everybody kind of experiences it very differently. However, I think it's important to also talk about it, as a Latina, from a Latina perspective, because our families sometimes do tend to be very close. And I think sometimes parents are not fully prepared for when that happens, right? And so I can speak on behalf of my parents and my family as well, that this is something that there's just no set of instructions on how to deal with this after it happens as well. So let's just start off by just giving you a little bit of context about my life situation, my family situation as well. So I am the middle child. I am the middle of 5 siblings. And so growing up, we were always a very close family. And I feel we still, we're all still in each other's lives. And for me, that's very important, right? Because that's how we grew up. Always kind of doing things together. My parents are still married. They're still together as well. And our first house was actually we lived in a mobile park. So we lived in a trailer. I know that this was 5 siblings and my parents. So it was a full house, right? It was a very, very tight space, but somehow we made it work. And then after living in the mobile park, we moved to a bigger house. And so moving into this bigger house, it allowed us to have a little bit more privacy and a little bit more space. And so growing up, I do remember my mom and my dad not always being very receptive to me or my siblings spending a night in someone else's house, whether that was a family member or a friend, right? And I remember just not wanting to even ask them to spend the night, because I myself didn't want to spend the night. I always felt more comfortable with just having my cousins come to the house and spend the night, or just having my friends come over. That just felt more comfortable for me. And so that's just kind of how it was, right, growing up. For me personally, I love being at home. I'm a huge homebody. And so that was kind of my experience growing up. And so, I always knew that there was going to come a point in my life where I had to move out, right? Like that's just what happens as an adult. Like you live with your parents help raise you, and then eventually, like as part of becoming an independent adult, like the next move is to move out, right? And so that happened for me like later on in my life, right? And so fast forward years later, I got engaged. So my husband now proposed to me in 2020, and he, I think we always knew that we wanted to experience living together first, before getting married, right? And so I think that was something that was important for both of us. And so like I think after we got engaged, like I think my mom and my dad both knew that, after an engagement comes a wedding, right? A marriage. And with that comes you moving out of your parents' house, right? Which is me in this situation. And so I think they realized that was going to happen eventually. And so for me, I was having like just ongoing conversations with my husband about what that would look like, right? So whether it was like, let's just buy like a new place, right, where both you and I can start like living there, or either I can move into your house, into his house, right, so that we can experience living together as well. So we started looking at houses, and eventually we found one that we really liked. However, because it was a new property, we were added to a wait list, right? And so that was a little discouraging to us. But then again, we said, okay, well, like if it's meant to be, like it'll be, right? And so we were added to the wait list. At this point, I said, well, if it doesn't work out, then maybe I can just move in with him, right? And then we can live together, we can experience that, and then eventually we can set a date for our wedding. So a few weeks pass by, and then I get a phone call from the realtor, and she tells me that the couple right above us on the list decided to pass on the house. So they were no longer interested. And so she says, so then you guys are next on the line. So I want to know if you guys are interested in the house. And so I had a conversation with my husband, fiance at the time, about this, and we both decided to go and talk to the realtor, look at the house, check out the neighborhood once again, just to make our final decision. So I think during this time, we were both just so excited about this opportunity, and also like we thought about, if we don't jump on this opportunity now, like we're just gonna get pushed off the market, right? And so we decided to move forward, and like a few weeks later, like after we closed the deal, we got the keys. And so I think because we were just so busy with the house, right, with signing paperwork and all those kind of rigorous things that happen when you purchase your home, I didn't really think about, oh shit, like this means that I got to start packing up my things, right? I got to start packing things up in my room. I got to tell my parents about this, and then like I have to move out. So like that didn't really cross my mind because I hadn't had time to really process all of that. And so then eventually, right, there comes the time where my husband and I decided to invite my parents to dinner. And so my husband cooked for them, and we decided that we wanted to talk to them about like our next steps and what that was going to look like. So we told them, we said, okay, like, ya estamos comprometidos, nos queremos casar, o nos vamos a casar, y pues queremos movernos. We want to move in together. And so just note that my parents are just very, very traditional, right? So my parents got married and then they moved in together. So I wasn't too sure about how they were going to react to this news. However, I think after just being very transparent and honest with them about our plans, they were pretty receptive to this idea. And so, that wasn't too bad. It was actually it was pretty easy. It was easier than I thought. So then, as I started to kind of think about things, I said, okay, well, like I have to go and I have to make time to clean out my room. I have to make sure that, I'm throwing things out that I don't need anymore. And so like as I'm sitting there in my room, I'm like going over like a lot of things that just started reminding me of my childhood. And like I started getting all these flashbacks of my childhood in my room, and like me being like a teenager and like inviting my friends over. And I started to feel really sad, right? I started to feel really emotional, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I said, holy shit, like I'm moving out soon. Like I'm leaving behind this home where I grew up in, this home where I have like so many like awesome memories. But at the same time, I thought about all those times where like me and my mom like tend to like bump heads. I know that like my mom is like, she's like my best friend, right? And so like I tell her everything. We have a really good relationship, but like you guys know that when you live with your mom, with your parents, and you're an adult already, and then you have like two females with like sort of different, like just we have different personalities, we have different perspectives, like we're gonna clash, right? So then like that's what started happening a lot of the time, where we just started clashing. And we just kind of felt like we're not getting along, like we're having arguments too. So then I thought about that too as I was cleaning out my things. I said, okay, well, like this is also a great like opportunity for maybe me and my mom to like improve our relationship. And like if I move out, like we're gonna have more space from each other, like our relationship is gonna improve, right? So I started thinking of all the like positive things that can come out of me moving out of the house. That was my way of making myself feel better. So here I am in my room. I'm cleaning out my room and I'm packing up my bags and I'm putting things in boxes, and I'm like watching as my mom is just like passing down the like the hallway, and she's just kind of looking at me, and I can tell that she was kind of avoiding me. And so that was a pretty hard part, right? Just kind of like coming to terms with the idea that like in a few days I was going to be out of the house, and I was going to be out of that room where like my mom and my dad were so used to seeing me in. And so so then eventually, I packed my things. I started bringing things to the new house. And so note that during this time we had already gotten the keys. And my husband had already like moved out all his things from his house to the new house. So he was doing a lot of like going back and forth. And eventually like all of his things were at the new house already. So he was pretty settled in already. And so I think that had been like maybe like the third or fourth day after we got the keys. And he was staying at the new house already like by himself, because I knew that I was just like procrastinating and avoiding moving to the new house. I knew this. I knew I was doing it. I was prolonging me moving out because I didn't feel like I was ready. So during this time, I kind of found like excuses to say, oh, well, like because I'm working, I don't have time to pack all of my things. Like I'll get to it tomorrow. And like on the weekend, I'll finally make like the big move. Right. So I kept coming up with excuses. And so eventually I remember my husband was like, okay, like, yeah, like go for, like, take your time. It's okay. Like I'll be here. But then I remember him like saying, okay, like, so when are you gonna move in? Right? Like when are you gonna come and like move all of your things? And so I think that's when I realized, you know what, who am I kidding? Right? Like this is just something that I've been wanting to do, and like here I am, like I just need to do it. So anyway, as I packed all of my last things, I remember like thinking, how am I going to like, do I say bye to my mom? Like, am I casual about me leaving the house? Like, how do I even act, right? And yeah, just kind of talking about it now, it's still a little emotional, even though it's been almost like 3 years already, right? And like, yeah, so it's been a few years now, but yeah, so as I moved, I remember just telling my mom, okay, mom, pues ya me voy, and then she gave me her blessing, and then I left, and I was just like bawling my eyes out in the car, like I was so emotional. I think a part of that too is I felt a lot of guilt in leaving. I felt guilt in leaving because of, me being a middle child. I felt like I inherited a lot of responsibilities that I think a lot of us do, especially like in Mexican households, right? Like I was the one that helped my parents like with translation, with interpretation. I helped them kind of navigate, like things like paying for their mortgage, applying for certain things, right? So like I inherited a lot of those responsibilities. And so like I thought about that too, like, okay, well, like who's gonna do that for them now if I'm not at the house? So I started feeling guilty. And so those were like emotions that I just wasn't ready to like to deal with then. And I think when you feel guilty, right, like it really just puts you like in this very tough situation. But also just kind of naming that emotion is also very important because it helps to provide to you like more understanding of what's happening in that moment. And so I knew that it was a right thing for me to do, right? Like I said, well, like I've reached this new milestone in my life. I'm so excited to start this new chapter of like being a homeowner and living with my partner and just kind of like, us starting, new memories in this house as well. But it took a while. I think the first week of living at my new house, I just felt very like, I felt a lot of like mixed emotions. It was very bittersweet. And so I had to remind myself that it was just time. It was time, that this is just a normal part of life, right? And that my parents were going to be okay regardless if I was at the house or not. And that this was also going to help improve the relationship that I had with my mom and my dad because, because now we were going to have our own space. And I feel like now she was going to like respect me even more. I think sometimes when we live in our house, sometimes our parents forget that we are adults and they still treat us like children. And so like I felt that this was going to help my mom look at me and perceive me in a different manner as well. And it has helped so much. I think as time has passed by, like I'm starting to just feel more at peace with me moving out. And I know it might be very silly for a lot of people that have moved out of their house at an early age or that were just like super ecstatic about moving out. However, my experience was just a little bit different, right? And so when, like the first few weeks of me living in the new house, I noticed that I was just like constantly like wanting to invite my family over to be here at my house with me. And because I feel like I still wanted to like have a little bit of their essence within me. And like, I feel like that kind of helped me with the transition as well. But then at the same time, I was also kind of disregarding, like my husband's and I privacy during that time of like, well, we're both moving into this new home together. Like both of us together just have not had time to enjoy it by ourselves because here I am like inviting my family over constantly, right? So like, I had to check in with myself about that too. And like my husband, in the most like gentle and the most nice manner, he kind of approached me about it as well. And like that helped me again to realize that, like I am like, I'm still trying to adjust, right? And at the same time, I realized like, okay, this is my new house. This is my house with my husband. And like, I also want to respect like our time together. And when I can invite my family, like I will, right? And so now, right, forward like years later, my family still comes over often, but it's not as often anymore because I do really, really appreciate my time with my husband in our house and like just enjoying each other's presence. And so that's been really nice. Come forward, years later, I just want to say that there's just no right or wrong way of doing this. I know everybody experiences transition very different. Moving out of your parents' house can like be the happiest moment, or it can be just like a moment of confusion or you feeling guilt about making the move as well. So I just want to say that like, however you experience this and however you navigated, like all of that is valid and all of that is okay. And I just wanted to share that experience with you all because I know there's people out there that maybe also kind of struggled with moving out of their parents' house for the first time. And so, I would love to hear other people's stories about how it was for them, how you dealt with it, and like, how was it after as well, right? Because there's just so much that comes up as we are moving on and like starting our own families as well, and then leaving our families that helped raise us, that we have spent all of our childhood with as well. So that's my story. And so I hope that you all, found some significance in this story as well. I always truly find it very interesting when I hear other people's stories about, their first time moving out of their house and like how they experienced it as well. And so, there's some healing in telling your story as well, because again, these are things that some people might feel a little bit of shame about when they talk about, and some people just don't want to talk about it as well. But I really wanted to share my story as well. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you so much for those of you who stuck around for this whole episode. Once again, I want to thank you for being present today. I want to thank you for your attentiveness, for you supporting this channel, and please look out for more episodes like this where we talk about real life experiences as well, and how we navigate through those experiences, right? Because we're all still learning, right? I think we're ongoing learners. We never stop learning, and we're always experiencing new things in our lives. So once again, thank you all for listening in. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.